has 14%, so I'm hoping it stays.
All right. I'll project.
You bring it over here because I'm gonna have to do it.
Oh.
We'll see. We can get them.
You don't need it. Okay. Just the roll call. Okay. Yeah. You don't need it.
Welcome, and thank you everyone for coming. Before we start the meeting, we have some information about how to access Spanish language interpretation for the meeting. And Regina Santos Moreno, would you come up and explain that for us? Thank you.
Hi, can you hear me? Great. I have a brief bilingual message to share with all of you. Buenas tardes, tengo un mensaje breve bilingüe que quiero compartir con todos ustedes. Como ya se mencionó, mi nombre es Regina Santos Moreno y estoy aquí con mi compañera Refugio Silva y estaremos proporcionando interpretación simultánea entre el inglés y el español. Si quisieran acceder a esta interpretación, si quisieran escuchar el evento de hoy en español, tenemos unos audífonos disponibles para que lo puedan hacer. Si en cualquier momento tienen preguntas o complicaciones, por favor déjenos saber y estaremos más que felices para asistirlos. Les recordamos a todos que presenten o hablen algo, que por favor hablen en voz alta y clara, recuerden de usar el micrófono y hablar a un paso moderado para que nosotros los podamos seguir con más precisión. So, as was just mentioned, my name is Regina Santos Moreno, and I am here with my colleague, Juca Silva, and we will be providing simultaneous interpretation between Spanish and English. So if you would like to access this interpretation, if you would like to hear today's event in Spanish, we have some listening devices available for you to do so. If at any point you have any questions or problems, please come up to us and we'd be more than happy to help. We would like to remind all of our speakers, anyone who has anything to present, to remember to speak in a loud voice, remember to use the microphone, and remember to speak at a moderate pace so that we may best follow along with everything that is being said today. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Now, a little information about public participation. A live stream of the State Route Safety Committee meeting is available via YouTube on the SBCAG channel, and the web link is listed on the agenda. And for all of those participating tonight, you're welcome to provide comments on any matter listed on the agenda by completing and delivering a speaker slip to an SBCAG staff member before the item comes before us. So if you'd like to speak, fill out a slip. And if you're on the agenda, then you'll speak after the item is presented. Then we'll also have general public comment and people, if it's not on the agenda but it's within SBCAG's jurisdiction, you can speak about that at the end. We really appreciate a lot of people submitted comments ahead of time, and where we received those, everybody on the committee has them, and I've actually made a list of issues that people raised. So with that, we're calling the meeting to order, and Ms. Lauren Bianchi-Clement, would you please call the roll?
Yeah. Laura Capps.
Here.
Joan Hartman.
Here.
Mark Infante.
Here.
Dave King.
Here.
And Paula Perotti.
Here.
You have a quorum and all members are present.
All right, and then do we have any announcements from committee members who would like to make brief welcoming comments or any announcements? This is going to be a very efficient meeting from up here. Okay, our first item is the minutes. We have to approve the minutes of September 29th, 2021, the State Route 154 Safety Committee meeting minutes. So let's see. Is there
Madam
any...
Chair,
Yes.
would you like to do the pledge before we lead on to that?
Let me see, did I miss that in my script? I did indeed, and I thank you. Ms. Kern, no, let me ask, Mayor King, would you lead us in the pledge, please?
And where is it?
Where is the flag?
It's on the wall, right there.
Where is it on the wall here?
Yep.
Here we go. Okay, hand over your hearts. Repeat after me. I pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God,
indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Mayor King.
Thank you for that.
So that takes us then to the minutes. Is there any public comment on the minutes? Is there any board discussion about the minutes? And sure, so this is about the minutes from the last meeting and you'd like to, okay, please go ahead.
My name's Rocco Roberts. I live in Los Olivos. I've been there all my life. And the urgency that we, especially Los Olivos residents and any other people that live along 154, feel about the situation in 154, I'm just shocked that your last meeting was September 29th of 21. And so I would kind of like to understand why that is. Thank you.
Well, this committee, I should explain that SBCAG meets monthly, and we discuss issues of safety in that context as well. So the public is allowed to participate in those meetings, of course, but this is an opportunity where we bring all the agencies together and to hear from the community in a bringing government to you, bringing all the agencies to you. And if you feel that we need to do this more often in the future, we certainly will. We do have a frequently asked questions on this SBCAG website that we continually update, and that provides a lot of fundamental background information. But if at the end we think that we need these meetings more often or on a regular schedule instead of as needed, we're happy to reconsider. And thank you for bringing that to our attention. Okay, may I have a motion to approve the minutes of September 29th, 2021?
So moved.
And a second?
Second, King.
And all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Passes unanimously. So next, we have to elect our officers, and Executive Director Kern, would you explain this item for us?
Yes, Madam Chair, members of the committee, every year or so, an elected officer needs to lead this committee, and currently we have a chair but no vice chair. Currently the chair is Joan Hartman, 3rd District County Supervisor Director, as well as a Director of SBCAG Board. So if you want to continue to be chair, I think that's appropriate if the committee would like to continue with that, but we do need to at least elect another vice chair. So with that, I'll turn it back to the chair to manage the election.
All right.
Chair,
Yes, Mayor Parodi.
I'd like to, it doesn't say anything, and I reread the bylaws, and it seems like it would be fine if we were to I was to nominate you to be chair again this year.
Well,
You're doing a great job.
I would be honored to continue. Could we get a vice chair volunteer or nomination, and then we can do this in one fell swoop? Mayor King.
I knew that was coming.
Your predecessor served as vice chair. That's why we don't have one. Would you be willing?
Yes, ma'am. And I'd like to second your nomination.
Okay, so I will take that we have a motion and a second for Hartman chair and King vice chair.
That's good. Good, nice mixture.
Let's see, I guess we need public comment, offer public comment on this, if anybody would like to comment on this matter. Seeing no request to speak, all in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? All right. So next we are turning to the panel presentations. Ms. Bianchi-Clemon, would you explain what's ahead of us now?
Yeah, thank you, Chair Hartman and fellow committee members. My name, for the record, is Lauren Bianchi-Clemon. I'm the Government Affairs and Public Information Manager for SBCAG. And just kind of taking us all back a bit, the SBCAG Board of Directors, SBCAG stands for Santa Barbara County Association of Governments, formed the State Route 154 Safety Committee formally in 2019. And as Chair Hartman mentioned, it was to convene public agencies to address safety-related concerns among committee members and the public. So it provides this forum opportunity. So today we have several presentations for the committee and for the public from the California Highway Patrol, Caltrans District 5, as well as our agency, the County Association of Governments, as well as the County of Santa Barbara Public Works Department is here. So these presentations you'll hear tonight cover a wide range of topics, everything from travel trends to an overview of crash data and citation stats, and updates on safety improvements on the highway and local roads. There is a specific focus on this forum on the Los Olivos community, so thank you for being here. After we complete the presentations, we will go into a public forum, Chair Hartman, as part of this agenda item. And so the public who have submitted a public comment card will be offered the opportunity to have a Q&A with members of this panel. If you need a public comment card, please raise your hand. We do have some SBCAG members that will be passing out some speaker slips. Maya Kulkarni in the background has some speaker slips. We have one right here in the front, Maya, with the hat, needs a speaker slip. And so, and then feel free to give that to Maya, and we'll make sure Chair Hartman has that speaker slip. Also on your staff report on this item, there is the frequently asked questions document. There are a number of questions that we've received over the years on safety on 154 that all these agencies that we've mentioned and you'll hear from tonight have worked hard to think through some of those questions and include them in the FAQ document as a resource. And so tonight is an opportunity for us to take a look at that and refresh it going forward. So thank you, Chair Hartman, and I'll turn it over to you to introduce the first speaker.
All right, and let me just add about the frequently asked questions. That was really a product of our last meeting. And I think it's a way to institutionalize the knowledge, and that's available on the SBCAG website. And the questions that were asked at the last meeting or that have come up in the interim are attached to the minutes today and will be then incorporated into those frequently asked questions along with new questions that we have today. So with that, and one of the things that's really was interesting in the frequently asked questions development was we had all the agencies working together. SBCAG managed that process, and so it took some doing to make sure that everybody agreed, and I think that was a very useful exercise. So the first presenters will be the California Highway Patrol, Commander Michael Lowy of Santa Barbara and Lieutenant Eric Zivick in Buellton, and please go ahead.
Well, good evening, everybody. I'd certainly like to thank you for coming to this meeting and allowing us to present on behalf of Commissioner Sean Dury of the California Highway Patrol and Coastal Division. We're pleased to be here today to present. So the first things we're going to cover is our role, then we'll talk about some of the responsibilities that we have regarding enforcement, and then what we do to help with the education piece. We'll follow that up with some data to provide you about the crash picture, and then subsequent to that, I'll pass it over to Lieutenant Eric Zivick, and he'll discuss the focus point of Los Olivos and the western part of the 154, which I'm sure many of you have questions upon. So what is our role? CHP's role is to save lives and to reduce crashes and keep everybody so they can go home safely and we can get goods traveling through the community in a safe manner, in an efficient manner. So there are 5 E's to traffic safety, and 2 of the ones that primarily affect California Highway Patrol are enforcement and education. Some of the others, which you may not be familiar with, are the engineering piece, emergency response, and then emergency technologies. So we want to paint a broad picture of the 154. As many as you know, it's about approximately 32 miles long and encompasses the eastern and the western part of Santa Barbara County. And so what we've done is we've captured some of the data from both agencies or both departments, the Buellton CHP office and the Santa Barbara CHP office. And I will say, I'll give credit to the Buellton CHP office. They carry the water with the enforcement and the activity on the 154, and is part of the reason why we're all here today in this room. So if you look at the total citation activity over the last 3 years, you can see we've issued over 4,000 citations. And this does not include warnings or other minor parking tickets and things like that. It's just violations involving vehicles. So violating speed and other motor mechanical violations and things of that nature. And I want to bring your attention to the DUI arrests. You can see over the years, it's kind of gone down just a little bit, not a whole lot. And if you can't see the caveat on there, we've captured the data through May of 2023. So you can see a total of 56 driving under the influence arrests, which could be either alcohol and drugs, or drugs alone. So there are many different ways. Next. Okay, so what are we doing? Obviously, education is a huge part of this. Enforcement is one piece, but that's not going to solve the puzzle alone. So we obviously, for enforcement, it's a primary beat for both the Buellton and the Santa Barbara areas. What does that mean? It means every day we put officers on the road. The 154 is a primary consideration in our enforcement efforts. As we are all dealing with resource constraints, we still make sure that the 154 receives the proper attention that it deserves. In-view patrol and proactive enforcement, our officers are out here, and they're out here looking for unsafe driving patterns, and they're taking proactive enforcement to try and curb that, to save a life and to reduce crashes. We have several tools that we use. We have grants. One of them is the Safe on All Roads grant that provides us the opportunity to put extra officers on the road to ensure that people go home safe and they drive safely. So let's move on to the education piece. So we have lots of education programs that we provide, safety messaging, social media platforms. We have programs such as Start Smart, every 15 minutes, Age Well, Drive Smart, and then ongoing communication and collaboration with allied agencies, other government partners, and of course the community. It takes a village to make it happen. So that's part of our effort. Next. So what I'd like to do now is kind of show over the last 3 years kind of what the crash picture in general has been on the 154. And this encompasses from the Santa Barbara city limits all the way down to the 101. And if you can see this, we've had a decrease in crashes over the last 3 years. Of course, we're only a little bit less than halfway through 2023, but we're trending in the right direction. And the majority of the crashes are property damage only. Of course, nobody wants to be involved in a collision, but if nobody gets hurt, one fatality and one injury is one injury too many. So we're working to reduce that. And one of the concerns that we've heard throughout our meetings is commercial driving. And I just want to share, you can see in 2021, for example, there were 152 crashes, only 6 of them involved commercial vehicles. Commercial vehicles being big rigs, semi-truck pulling tractor trailers, and so forth. And this year, we have one up to this point in June. So we're trending in the right direction. Next. Okay, so another popular question that we receive is, when did the crashes happen, day of the week? As you can see, if you look at I'm sure everybody can see the graph. If you can't, it's pretty much we have a spike on Saturday, but not really too much. Over the week, it seems to be spread out pretty consistently throughout the week. And that's really the message I want to drive home here is we have to have safe driving every day of the week. And the graph shows that it's happening every day. We can't really pinpoint it to one event, which would help us focus our enforcement. It's kind of throughout the week. Next. So crash hours, if you look to the left on the graph, that's midnight, it goes all the way to 11:59 p.m. And we have the spikes. This is typical. What I wanted to demonstrate here is the crashes typically happen when you would expect them. During commute hours, high tourist times, and things of that nature. All right, so what are causing the crashes? Of the crashes that we were able to assign a primary crash factor, which is what is the main contributing factor that we were able to determine throughout our investigation on our crashes. The overwhelming majority of our crashes are caused by unsafe turning movements and unsafe speed. hence the proactive enforcement, things that we can easily address out on the roadways. But there's a whole host of other issues that go along when you take them collectively, cause crashes. And if you can see that DUI, intersections, passing over double yellows, unsafe start, in other words, pulling onto the roadway without ensuring that it's clear and things of that nature. So what we really want to message is make sure you're paying attention while you're driving, reduce your speed. And one of the things that's lost on the graph that we really can't seem to get a figure on is distracted driving. We know that plays a part in most of the violations. These are just the objective things that happen because of the distracted driving, but our message is simple. Pay attention to the roadway, put down the devices, and let's focus on getting to where we need to go safely. Okay, so what I'd like to do now is turn it over to Lieutenant Eric Zivic, who will discuss the local Los Olivos situation.
Commander Logie, could I just ask you one question? Could you define unsafe turning? I thought it was turning out from an intersection, but that's another section.
So unsafe turning can be any movement. Typically what we'll see is somebody will come up on somebody from behind, and if they're not paying attention to really look, all of a sudden somebody's there, and then they'll jerk the wheel to the left or the right to avoid them. Typically that's kind of what we see, or they go to stop suddenly and they think they're going to go out of the way to turn and they don't make it. You know, it's basically, it also could be like an unsafe kind of lane change where it's not a multiple lane roadway.
Hello, my name is Eric Zivic. I'm the Lieutenant Commander of the Buellton area. I want to thank the committee for having the Highway Patrol here and for Mike's words. The Buellton and Santa Barbara area work together to make the 154 safe, and I'd just like to reiterate that the California Highway Patrol's mission is to protect life and property. So that's what our officers do out there every day. And so specifically for this meeting, I wanted to focus on some data from 2021, 2022, and 2023, specifically on the Los Olivos area, to just give you an idea of what types of crashes that we're having there and in what frequency. So starting with 2021, if you can see on the map, I took a snapshot of just the Los Olivos region, which encompasses some of the major intersections that are of concern today. Boxing Canyon, Figueroa Mountain Road, Alamo Pintado Avenue, and then going out to the Los Olivos grocery market. So in 2021, we had 2 property damage collisions, 3 injury crashes, and 0 fatalities. When we talk about the primary collision or crash factors, those crashes were primarily related to unsafe speed and at Figueroa Mountain and Fox and Canyon related to stop sign violations. So people who don't come to a complete stop, don't yield to oncoming traffic, and then pull out onto 154 and then get hit by someone traveling east or west on 154. Those are typically the primary crash factors that we're seeing in that area in Los Olivos. We'll move on to the next slide. So in 2022, again, you'll see in that same area, 3 property damage collisions, 7 injury crashes, and no fatalities. So just to remind everyone, in those years, we had 152 crashes in 2021 on the entirety of the 154, from the 101 in Santa Barbara to the 101 in the Buellton area. And out of that collection of statistics, we're seeing about 7 to 10 crashes a year in the Los Olivos area. So a very small percentage, but very impactful for the community because you, who are the residents in Los Olivos, experience those all the time. And these statistics only show the crashes that are reported, that we respond to and take a report on. There are many times where crashes occur in that area, and then the people leave the area before we can respond and take a collision report. So we'll move on to 2023. So be mindful that this is just a fraction of the year so far, but it shows 1 property damage crash, 2 injury crashes, and then for most of you in the community that are aware of 1 fatal crash that occurred in that area. So this is sort of a snapshot of what's happening in the Los Olivos region. We have the statistics collected for all of the 154, but I wanted to be mindful to highlight just the specifics here for this community to see what was happening. So that is that is all that I have to present on as far as the statistics go, and I'll be happy to take questions at the end for anyone who has any questions about the area in general. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So turning to Caltrans District 5, Peter Hendricks, the District Division Chief, Traffic Programs.
Good evening. It is great to see you all out here, and I thank you, Supervisor Hartman, for putting this together and putting a focus on highway safety to the San Ynez Valley here. So my name is Pete Hendricks. I'm with Caltrans, District 5. We have 5 counties: Santa Barbara, San Luis Obispo, Monterey, Santa Cruz, and San Benito County. We have the coastal routes, and some of these rural highways are of keen interest to us, and it is a particular focus. Can I have the controller?
Yes, if you want it, you point that way.
Okay, just point it. There we go, great. Sorry about that. And so, you heard tonight some data, and so what do we do with this data? Caltrans, and for that matter, everyone here, is really interested in reducing fatalities, not reducing, but eliminating. Caltrans wants to eliminate fatalities and serious injury by 2050. With that said, it's a people-centric approach. It is also a safe systems approach. Just go back to this last slide and point you towards this little wheel. So this wheel consists of different attributes of the safe systems approach. And you'll see that it is fairly comprehensive, but one of the core principles is that it is people-based. It is people making decisions, but we are trying to make use of the data to make good decisions so that the human body in these collisions is not injured or fatally injured. So with that said, this particular slide shows some data of relevance for you all and us here at the table that when we look at collisions in the United States between rural and suburban environments, the rural environment has a little bit more than 1/3 of the collisions in the United States, and the urban has more. Right? So, but then when you look at vehicle miles traveled, there's less vehicle miles traveled. And so what that math equates to is that you have a more severe problem on the rural highways, which is what I would call 154. And so with that said, there's some interesting statistics here that in terms of our roadways throughout the United States, we do see fatalities and serious injuries increasing. We don't want to see that trend continue. It is encouraging to see the data trend that Commander Logie went over tonight in terms of serious injury and fatality numbers generally decreasing with time on 154. And so, another important statistic here is that this is a comprehensive approach. While we are talking about Highway 154 tonight, there's a lot more roadways out there. And a statistic to pay attention to is that when you look at the distribution of collisions with serious injury and fatalities on local roads versus state highways, it's more on the local roads. And so that is something to pay attention to and get excited about in terms of investing dollars to improve safety on local roadways, in addition to state highways. I don't want to take away our thunder at Caltrans, but let's keep going. Okay. There we go. Okay, so I talked about this before, but Caltrans is interested in a zero fatality by 2050 vision. That's part of our safe system approach. That's an ambitious goal. And it's not going to be a Caltrans issue. It's going to be every person in this room, every person in the state of California, every politician and engineer focused on the idea of saving lives on our roadways. So this, to go into that a little bit more, I would consider this a public health crisis. And so with that said, we need everyone's buy-in, car manufacturers, transportation agencies, insurance industries, trucking, educators, emergency services, to name some, incident response systems, consumers. So in other words, everyone involved in the transportation system. So the Safe System approach is one of the campaigns that you're not going to see leaving Caltrans anytime soon. Here's some other very successful campaigns. These campaigns have meaning because these messages stick with people. So hopefully we can come up with a campaign message that is has a little bit more pop than the Safe System approach. But anyway, we're thinking about that at Caltrans. Here's some of the core principles of the Safe System approach. Death and serious injury is unacceptable. We understand that humans make mistakes. There's a human behavior aspect to this. Humans are vulnerable. We want to look at everything that goes into a collision, from the vehicle safety systems, from the environment to the roadway design. And responsibility is shared. Like I said, it's going to take everybody to dig into this. And safety is proactive. Caltrans is espousing and pushing for proven safety countermeasures. We have a website with Caltrans. I'll make a shameless plug for Caltrans and our information sources at the end that you are welcome to tap into. And you can also reach out to us and we can point you to more resources associated with that. Redundancy is crucial. We want to look at these systems working together to try to tip that needle towards zero by 2050. This graphic came out a little strange, but it looks like, some of the strategic priorities for Caltrans with our strategic highway safety plan, these are some of the top 5. There's more, but these are the top 5. Lane departures, and this is by seriousness, and lane departures, speed management, aggressive driving, impaired driving, pedestrians, also intersections. I know that's difficult to read. And then there's some additional data here to dig into, if you wish. And some of the questions that we get at Caltrans a lot is, how can we make something happen out on the state highway? It takes some grit and it takes involvement. And so I wanted to walk through some aspects of the project development process to give you a flavor of what and who gets involved. This slide is slightly incorrect. There's a Senate Bill 45 introduced or passed in 1997, and that gave funding to the municipal planning organization, and that is a funding for locals to have input as to where highway and roadway funding gets placed, as opposed to Caltrans deciding where that gets placed. That's 75%, and the other 25% goes towards Caltrans. Our primary goals is to keep our facilities maintained, functional, and in good condition, or going towards good condition. And so with that said, there's an initiation process outlined here. But when we start talking about a project on the highway system, we have programs within Caltrans, such as our HSIP program, that stands for Highway Safety Improvement Program. And there's a procedure for that. There's a process. And so with that said, when it starts to fall outside that program and it becomes more discretionary, that's when it takes more local input and regional buy-in as to whether or not that is a top priority for funding. So with that said, there's some of the aspects. I'll just keep moving along. So I wanted to the slide that I shared with you before in terms of our strategic priorities was on a statewide basis. But here's a little drill down into some information in terms of what it looks like here locally. So at the top of the list, we look at lane departures. So when we talk about unsafe turns, those are movements turning one way or another from the way that you want to be staying in the road, or what would be expected. And so that's an issue. And so there's more on the rural roadways than there are in the urban roadways, which is what we'd expect on two-lane roads. So that's something to pay attention to. And then the next statistic down below goes into intersections as to where we see the collisions taking place in the county. This is based in SWITRS, a certain data program that the CHP manages. And the next highest would be speed management and aggressive driving. So there's some statistics here as to what we see between urban and rural, highway, non-state highway. And likewise for impaired driving. So impaired driving, that's not really something that Caltrans can really address. That's more of a behavioral issue. And that kind of goes into that idea of the safe systems approach, where the responsibility is really shared and incumbent upon every one of us to make sure that that doesn't happen. There are potential systems that could be deployed in vehicles today that locks in ignition if somebody is drunk. And so that is a possibility. We'll see how much possibility that has in the political arena. I think we were requested to provide some traffic volume trends, so that is what this is pointing at here. And so obviously you would have expected a dip during COVID, and things are ticking upwards. Uh-oh. Okay, so what are some of the projects that are going on around here that Caltrans is involved in? We finished up in March 2021 with a curve warning sign project. You may have seen some of those curve warning signs and chevrons. That's the little black arrow pointing to the left or right. Look a little bit brighter. And in some cases, the advisory speed heading into those curves, that's not a regulatory speed, but a recommended speed. And that's a recommended speed for a maximum. Just because it says 45 doesn't mean you need to go 45. You could go 35. You drive to the conditions that you can travel safely. And we have a high friction surface treatment project. This is a result of people running off the road. So this is one method to help address tires staying on the road and not having a friction problem. That was completed last year. And there was some vegetation trimming at Fox and Canyon based on an investigation. So that is a power that you have to request Caltrans to look at certain locations. And you can contact us with the contact information that I'm going to show you towards the end of the slide if you feel that a location or a condition is unsafe that needs to be addressed. I will also make a shameless plug for our Caltrans maintenance stations, which are in the phone book, or you can look up the phone number on the web. Or you can reach out to our public information officers or through our customer service request line. We did more vegetation trimming at Armour Ranch Road as a result of an investigation there. And we did additional vegetation trimming at Paradise Road as a result of an investigation. And this project is currently under construction. This is the multi-use path at Alamo Pintado. And then there is a project in development, expected to begin, it looks like next year. And it's going to change the all-way stop at Baseline and Edison to a roundabout. Okay. And so there's different ways to get a hold of Caltrans. You can call us at this number. You can email us at this email. You can look us up on this website. So this particular link is to our customer service request line, where you can submit requests to look at something on the road. It's a fairly comprehensive audience at Caltrans that looks at these and disseminates them through the ranks to be addressed appropriately and swiftly. And then there's different ways to get information from Caltrans by the social media links here. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I did have an opportunity with a group to go with you to various intersections and sure appreciated you coming out with your staff. Next is Mike Becker, Director of Planning with the Santa Barbara County Association of Governments.
Yeah, thank you, Director Hartman. I am Mike Becker. I work at SBCAG, and today I'm going to offer a brief presentation on work related to to Highway 154 that SBCAG completed and currently has going on. In particular, I'm going to touch on two projects, the Ynez Valley Traffic Circulation and Safety Study, and then we currently have an ongoing project that produces some interesting data points, and that's what we call the Travel Trends Project, and I'll present some of the initial findings related to Highway 154. So the Traffic Circulation and Safety Study, we completed it in 2020. However, the process and the findings of that project remain relevant today. The project was a direct result of either you or people just like you talking to your elected representatives, who in turn talk to us, and the kind of first step in the process after we identify a concern is to conduct a study to see, to dive a bit deeper into those concerns and to potentially find some improvements that would mitigate those concerns. And a study is a necessary step in that process. Once we were directed by the board to pursue this, we developed a partnership with the Ynez Valley Band of Chumash Indians. And together we applied for a state planning grant, which was successful. Together we hired a planning and engineering firm to complete the work. And that project was driven by community outreach. We had very well attended public workshops. We had a very productive bus tour of the corridor that enabled members of the community as well as representatives of various organizations to point out the issues that you deal with every day. And this slide just shows a snapshot of the recommendations resulting from that study. And with a focus on Highway 154, the study found that intersection improvements at 3 different intersections were recommended, and those intersections were Fox and Canyon, Figueroa Mountain, Grand Avenue, as well as Roblar. And it didn't specify, it said some type of intersection treatment is recommended. However, we left it to be determined, whether it be a roundabout, a traffic signal, or a stop sign. And it also suggested that in the area between Roblar and the roundabout, that some type of feedback is provided to drivers, letting them know of their speed or to slow down, some type of dynamic speed control. So all these recommendations, they came through the study process, but ultimately they were driven by the public who made it known that there are issues that need to be addressed or need to at least be looked at. Okay, so to actually see, this is very similar to one of Peter's slides, but how a project moves through the process. First, members of the community or others identify that there's concerns that need to be looked at. Then we conduct a study to further investigate those concerns and to identify possible improvements. And then, so those are the two parts that have been done. Next, the projects become included in the regional transportation plan, which identifies the region's priorities, including Highway 154, but throughout the entire county, what are the priorities for the finite amount of funding that's available. And following inclusion in that, you identify and secure funding. However, I would say that that's identifying and securing a specific funding source directly for that project. And then you go through the engineering, the environmental phases, and eventually the project is delivered. I would say that we were just getting started with developing our next regional transportation plan, and it is likely that some type of improvements are included. However, at this point, they would likely be on the unconstrained, which means that we don't know where the funding would come from yet to deliver those improvements. So that's the circulation and safety study. And for the second part of my presentation, I'm going to talk about the travel trends. So this is a project that is beyond Highway 154. It's also a countywide project. And we will, through the project, we were able to obtain a subscription to a big data platform, which uses anonymized cell phone and credit card data to paint a picture of travel throughout the county. So I think if knowledge is power, this allows us to up our game and to have a better understanding of the types of travel that's occurring, where people are going, where they're coming from, et cetera. So just what you see on the slide is just the weekday in blue and the weekend or Saturday in orange of how the traffic flows on the 154. So you can see for the weekday, there's very clear morning and afternoon peaks, which you'd expect with people commuting to or from work. But the Saturday, it just tends to build throughout the entire day and peak around 4 o'clock in the afternoon. And just in general, in both the weekend and weekday, the dinner time hour is roughly the busiest on Highway 154. And then some facts that we were able to pull. So this is for southbound traffic. So this is traffic that enters 154 from the 101 north of Los Olivos. So we have weekday and Saturday, but just roughly 60% of those who get on the 154 their trip ends in Santa Barbara County, and about the same percentage began in Santa Barbara County. And I think while that is interesting, I think what's more interesting is the number that's not shown there is the opposite of that, is nearly 40% of the trips that are associated with the 154 began outside of Santa Barbara County or going to end outside of Santa Barbara County or both. So there's a lot of more regional traffic than local traffic on the highway. The traffic on the 154 is also associated with quite long trips. Was 84% or longer than 32 miles, and the average for all the trips that use the 154 is nearly 100 miles long. And again, we're looking at southbound right now. About 10% of the trips that are on there are related to commercial vehicles, and a good portion, about 60%, travel the entire length of the 154. Same thing, opposite direction. So this is the traffic that's entering the 154 in Santa Barbara from its southern terminus. But north of 70% remain in Santa Barbara County, and while this is about 10 to 15% higher than what you see in the southbound, there is a lot more development in the south where people perhaps are only getting on to get off at Cathedral Oaks or Highway 192. And then for about 60% began in Santa Barbara County. Again, that also means that 40% began somewhere else, and they're either destined for somewhere beyond Santa Barbara County or within the St. Ynez Valley or Santa Maria Valley. Also, it's associated in northbound direction with very long trips, the average, again, in that 100-mile ballpark. Roughly the same for the commercial vehicles, 10% around there. and roughly the same for the amount that travels the full length. So you can expect that if about 60% on either direction of the traffic that gets on the 154 from the 101 is going to travel the full length of the highway. Okay, then this is one of the more intriguing ones to me. This is a question that I want answered for a long time, and I'm glad that we've been finally able to answer it, is the 101 versus the 154. So from A to B, so with our data platform, we're able to isolate the trips that are on the 101 just north of the 154 and also on the 101 just south of the 154. So then we can determine the proportions that are going or choosing the 154 or the 101. So for the southbound direction, we found that more than 60% of the traffic that is connecting those 2 points choose the 154. 38% choose the 101. In the northbound direction, it's a little bit different. And first off, let me start with the first bullet of that B to A. The reason why that proportion of the 101 traffic that is in both locations is a lot lower is just because the traffic volumes in the south are much, much higher, and there's a lot of local traffic involved in those counts. So about 14% of the traffic that you'd see at Hope Avenue on the 101, you'd also see on the 101 north of Los Olivos. The numbers are a little bit different, but it's 54% choose to use the 154 compared to 46 that choose the 101. So in both directions, the 154 turns out is more popular for people who are traveling the long distances. And that's all I have. I'll pass it on to Barry.
Thank you very much, Mike. Next, we have the County of Santa Barbara Public Works Traffic Engineer, Gary Smart.
Thank you, Director Hartman. I'm going to discuss, very similar to Caltrans and SBCAG, the county's approach for initiating projects that are safety related. I'll go through the initiation process and the funding process real quick for you. It's very similar to what you've already heard. The county experienced a lot of collisions. This is 10 years worth of collisions throughout the county. We try to break those down in areas looking for hot spots. The projects are initiated from that study, also from reviewing collision reports. We'll look at every single collision report that we receive, review it, and look for issues with that. We listen to the public. We'll get calls, emails from people on our website. We have a email that'll come to everybody in Public Works, and we all review it. And any one of those ways can initiate a project with us. We have the collision reduction program we do where we look at spot locations. Every year we'll go through our list of hot spots, the highest collision locations. We'll take the top 10 to 20 and look at those locations, see if there's any engineering solutions that we can come up with for a project. Here's your area, Los Olivos area, the collisions. These are just on local roads reported in the last couple of years. We look at, well, let me go back to that. We're looking at also segments of roadways. That last list was intersections. As you can see here, we have a few on the Ballard Canyon. So that's an area we're studying. We also have our local road safety plan, which is another way of processing the data. Through here, we're looking at characteristics. We're taking all the collision data and breaking it down by characteristics of the roadway. So we're looking at width of the roadway, width of the edge of the roadway. What was the driver's behavior? Were they impaired? You know, the percentages there. Here, we're seeing the same results as Caltrans does on their facilities, whereas lane departures is our leading cause of fatalities. And so that's where we're trying to allocate our money for projects on these type of approaches here. We also have public input projects that we did. We just recently did the active transportation plan for the county. This went through all the different areas of the county, including the Santa Ynez Valley, and got input from people where they wanted to see active transportation projects, which is, you know, for pedestrians, bicycles, bus, all those type of things. And they're just missing. They may not come up on a safety project, but they're needed for safety. So sidewalk infill would be something, or pathways. bike lanes. And then once we have those projects, we got to start looking for money for it. Just because we have a project doesn't mean we have the funding. A lot of the funding will come through grants. For example, the highway safety plan that state administers, and we apply for every cycle. We've gotten several $1 million through that process to update guardrail, improve pedestrian facilities. We have a project on Harris Grade. Whoops, I think I hit that the wrong way. Going the wrong way. And then smaller projects that we have, and this a lot of times come from citizens. I think a majority of the projects we do are citizen initiated. We'll have, here I have a couple examples. We had the truck restrictions we did over on Ballard and on Edison. We're looking at other locations. We have crosswalk. We've just installed over the little community of Ballard at a citizen request. The parking up on Alamo Potato, right there. Used to be a big ditch there, drainage ditch, where nobody could really park in safe or walk through there. We went through and graded that out and put in some parking, and we have angle parking there now and a better pedestrian facility. And then by the high school here, we have a path that was really a citizen-initiated kind of citizen project that the county just helped with to clear out encroachments and make a better path for pedestrians, and also clear out the path for the horses. And then bigger projects, like I mentioned, we have the Ballard Canyon, kind of the curvy area there. We have a history of collisions and problems there, fatalities. Those projects that cost more money, we got to look for funding sources. We look for grants, but also there's sometimes opportunities with our paving projects, coattailing on other projects we have to do a little widening. We want to try to get, next time we pave this section, which should be in a couple of years, we're going to widen just a tiny bit on the road, just enough to get a center line through this curvy part of it, so you can try to keep people on their side of the road going up and down this hill. Another funding source is when we have commercial development. We'll have the commercial development do improvements around their property. Maddie's Tavern is an example of that. One of the conditions for them is to install a left turn pocket on Highway 154. And that's being moved forward right now. Here's the preferred option, which I think is still the plan for it, but there is an alternative option that looks at just a left turn pocket going into town there. And that's it for my presentation.
Thank you very much. So that gives us a lot to think about. Before we turn it over to the public, and if you would like to speak, don't forget to submit a speaker form. But let's see, does any panelist have a question that they would like to put forward before we open it up to public comment? I had one. And that has to do with the project initiation process that Caltrans has. And would you explain the MPO? What I'm trying to figure out is how our traffic circulation that we did locally fits into Caltrans planning, or how we can elevate some of the local concerns that were identified there. And it seemed to me that the MPO funding that you described in your project initiation process might be one avenue. So that's my question.
Right. Exactly. Thank you. So there's a few ways that you can fund a project. So, excuse me. We have the HSIP funding process, right? And that is a safety-driven process where the location has been highlighted as having an unacceptable number of collisions at that location, in which case there's a dedicated type of funding source for those type of projects. And then there's other projects that do not meet that threshold that would be considered more discretionary, even though they may be more regionally important. That would be the mechanism to work a project, as Mike went over, into putting it into the constrained or unconstrained regional transportation plan, right? And so then the goal is to make sure that it is not unconstrained and unfunded and get it over in the constrained project portfolio. So that helps.
Okay, thank you. Director Kern, are you going to oversee the public comment process? Thank you.
So I do have a list of people who would like to speak. So I'm a little confused of which one you want to speak, which item you would like to speak on. So I'm just going to call your name, and if you want to just come up, we can just go from there. So I'm going to call a few names at a time so people can queue up. We have Mark Herthel, and Eric Shepard, and David Schwartz. Schwarty, something? Okay. So Mark. Thank you.
Is there a time limit?
You have, I think, 3 minutes.
Okay, great. Good evening. My name is Mark Herthel, lifelong Los Olivos resident, and thank you all for being here. I know a lot of you have, the whole state as your state, down to cities and counties that are under your purview, and a lot of us here tonight from Los Olivos, we really care about Los Olivos tonight, and thank you for listening to us. We do have a fairly significant issue crossing Highway 154 at Fox and Canyon and Figueroa Mountain Roads. If we could kind of narrow down, and maybe even up by the school, the other road there, but if we can kind of narrow everything down to that for our thinking, because we've seen a lot of data. And I have one statistic to add. There was a rollover at the crossing last week, and my wife and I drove by, and we saw some of our neighbors pulling 2 high school girls out of a rolled over car at the Fox and Canyon crossing. So I think what I'm hearing tonight is that there's a lot of process involved. I'm on a school board, I understand process, and we, Little Los Olivos, formed a public entity through LAFCO, so we're aware of process. So maybe after, if you guys, Supervisor Hartman, if you could help us understand the processes that were kind of presented and how Los Olivos community can come together and work with the different parties to help spearhead some improvements, some mitigation factors. We're not traffic engineers, but we do know that pulling out on that road is life and death. And it's amazing the statistics look like the way they do, because there's a lot of near misses. And there's a lot of pedestrians crossing as well, cyclists, and we've seen fatalities and we've seen a lot of near misses. And when you've seen those, it means a lot more to you. We also have a lot of family, friends, neighbors, employees that cross that every day. There's a lot of people that come to work into the valley through Los Olivos. So it's a pretty important area. And, we also have multiple schools in that little town. I think we're the only town actually separated on both sides of the town by the highway. So we have some unique aspects that the residents, I think, appreciate. So I think, look forward to working with you. Some of the ideas is if we could slow down the speed. We do have a school zone there. There's a 25-mile-an-hour sign when people are present. I've never seen anybody going 25 there. Maybe some stop signs. You've done a lot of improvements to 154 as a whole. It's a much safer road than when I was a kid. We used to have to cross 101, on a wish and a prayer at the end there. So there's been a lot of improvements, but I think if we could focus in on the little town of Los Olivos for some further improvements, and we're willing to help carry water and help on the process. So thank you so much. Good evening.
Thank you so much. Thank you for your comments. Appreciate that. So next we have Eric Shepard. If he could come up and speak. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. My name is Eric Shepard, and I live on Fox and Canyon Road in Los Olivos, which is a short distance from the intersection of Fox and Canyon and the 154. I appreciate the opportunity to speak this evening. On the afternoon of Sunday, April 16th this past year, I was in my house when I heard multiple loud sirens persisting in the background. In the 6 years of living in Los Olivos, I've come to take all siren noise very seriously, constantly worrying about automobile accidents as well as the threat of fires. On this particular afternoon, the sirens grew louder and were soon joined by helicopter noise. I knew something bad was happening. I looked online at the sbcfire.com website to see if any emergencies had been reported. Sure enough, a major accident was being responded to at the intersection of 154 and Fox and Canyon. I quickly walked down the street to the sight and sound of multiple sirens and helicopters. Much to my chagrin, the first thing I saw was a motorcycle laying on the ground. The scene was very frightening. Moments before I arrived, one of my neighbors, Ryan Schmitz, had heard the accident while in his kitchen and rushed out. He found the driver of the motorcycle laying on the street and administered CPR. Unfortunately, Ryan's efforts and those of the EMTs proved fruitless. The driver sustained severe injuries in the accident and died. An ambulance took him away as the police stayed on the scene to speak with the driver of the car that had hit him to oversee the cleanup. Within hours, we would learn the facts that 53-year-old Robert Stoke of Freedom, California, was riding his motorcycle eastbound on the 154 when he was struck by 57-year-old Scott Pigman of Vista, California, who was turning left from southbound Fox and Canyon Road. Stoke flew off his motorcycle when he hit and likely died instantly. Pigman, who was driving a 2018 Ford Mustang, was uninjured. Stoke was married and had children. This very sad incident is unfortunately something those of us who live nearby have come to expect. Whenever we hear the sirens, we know there must be another accident at the intersection. I do not have a specific count of how many have actually occurred, but suffice to say there have been many, and many very serious in nature. Several in just the last year have required helicopters to airlift accident victims to both hospitals in Santa Barbara and Santa Maria. There are many reasons why this intersection has become increasingly dangerous over the years. The popularity of driving apps such as Google Maps and Waze is one major contributor, which these statistics to me back up. For drivers traveling north or south on the 101, the apps typically direct drivers over the 154 since it shortens the commute by a few minutes and a few miles. Many of those same drivers would typically just stay on the 101, but instead take much more dangerous 154 to shave off a few precious moments. In addition, Los Olivos and the San Ynez Valley have grown in both population and in popularity with tourists. The many drivers who now use the 154 on a regular basis often have no idea there is even an intersection where it meets Fox and Canyon Road. It is not well marked with signage, and many drivers that use the 154 also frequently travel at very high rates of speed, far beyond the posted 55-mile-an-hour speed limit. I don't see a lot of highway patrol presence along this road, so drivers who speed have very little reason to slow down. And for those drivers attempting to make a left or right turn onto the 154 from Fox and Canyon, the increased traffic has made this a very dangerous prospect at times. The intersection often gets very cluttered with cars, drivers get impatient, and accidents happen, and they happen more and more frequently. As a resident of both Los Olivos and Santa Barbara County, on behalf of all my neighbors, I urge local officials and Caltrans to please do something to remedy this very dangerous situation. Doing nothing is not an option for us that live around here. Doing nothing will not improve the situation. It will only mean more accidents, more injuries, and more deaths, unfortunately. We urge you to address this situation as quickly as possible. Thank you for your time. And just on a sidebar here, I greatly appreciate these papers you've given us tonight with frequently asked questions. They're very helpful. I appreciate you coming down to give your reports on traffic patterns and what's being done. And I would urge the gentleman who spoke from SB CAG that showed us the 3 areas that were identified in 2020 as areas of intersections. I see that we're doing something on Baseline and Edison, but I would love to know what the other 2 intersections, what the future is for them, how we can get something moved forward, because leaving them as is dangerous for those who live around. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Eric. Appreciate that. Next up is David Schwartz.
Good evening, panel. My name is David Schwartz. Currently, I'm a camp host at Lake Kachuma, and I'm on 154 almost every day. And there's 2 spots that I think Caltrans can help make safer. One is a roundabout. We came down today and almost got creamed by a semi who was coming southbound and just paid no attention to the yield sign as if there were no roundabout there. You need to put some signage. People do not understand what yield means on a roundabout. I mean, it took a long time for me to understand how it was designed. But you need some signage on the road, and you should put some grooves to slow them down. Hopefully, the other roundabouts, if you can put more roundabouts in, you're going to have more problems because people don't understand what yield means. And you watch them all the time, a lot of near misses. on the roundabout, because no one knows what that means. Second area is coming out of Lake Kachuma and going south. People come over that hill, and if you've ever taken it, they're going at a great rate of speed. You got to slow them down somehow. Again, I would think that Grooves would do it with some sign. No one, 45 miles an hour, it says, doesn't work. And I've seen a lot of near misses with people pulling out with RVs and trailers. Thank God there's a center line that you can go on. So I think Grooves would help with some more signage on the roundabouts. In fact, I don't think there's a sign that says on when you get out of Lake Kachuma or you go over to the entrance at Kachuma, it doesn't say blind curve, but it really is when you come over the hill. It's kind of like I'm old enough to remember living in Buellton and trying to cross over 101. You took your life in your hands. Well, that's the same thing that's going on when you try to get out of Lake Kachuma and go south. That's my comments. Hopefully that'll generate some changes, because those are just areas that I see near misses almost every time I'm out there. Thank you.
Thank you so much, David. Appreciate your comments. We also had a question that somebody wrote down that didn't want to speak. So I'm going to read that question and we're going to have an answer. So what's going on with the rest stops on 101? When will they be done?
Ingrid had that question.
Ingrid had that question earlier today, and I think she answered it pretty well.
I actually spoke with Caltrans officials about this like 2 weeks ago. So if Caltrans doesn't have an answer off the top of their head, I can give them the answer that I was given. I'm Carson Link. I'm from the Office of State Senator Monique Limón, and I also just wanted to thank the public for being here, because it is really important to get this feedback, especially from folks who take this every single day. I mean, I'm commuting down to Santa Barbara as well, and I avoid the 154 like the plague if I can. I will say that I reached out to Caltrans about this. A couple of constituents have reached out. I want to use those rest stops as well. I live in Lompoc, so I make that commute, and sometimes I would like to use the bathroom there. So they were open for about 2 seconds, and then the storms happened and they had to close them. I was told because, not because of any local construction, I was told it's actually a water issue with the pipes, because up the pipeline, I guess, there was some significant damage. So the rest stops are not being supplied with water. If you've gone that way recently, you also noticed that they're trying to expand the highway right there. I was told that by the middle of summer, or by hopefully the end of summer, those will be open again. So I'm hoping that that's the case. We're going to keep hearing about it regardless. So again, if it's not open by the end of summer, please feel free to come in and check us on that, and we can reach out to Caltrans or reach out to Caltrans yourself and see if what the update on that is. But I was told that by mid to end of summer that those will be open again.
Thank you, Carson. Appreciate that. Rocco Roberts, did you have another question that you wanted to ask? Or comment you wanted to make? Thank you.
Well, for us that live along the 154 corridor, and I'm 70, so I probably can remember 60 years of it, and I've seen that highway go from a sleepy little country road to the racetrack it is today. And the mindset, if you hit on it, Mr. Caltrans, I forgot your name. What is it?
Peter.
Hendrick?
Peter.
Pete Hendricks.
Okay. The aggressive drivers and the speeders, you come down Highway 101 southbound, they're doing 70, 75 miles an hour or more. They get off on the 154 turnoff. They do not stop at the stop sign, very seldom, unless there's a CHP officer parked there sometimes, and that helps. But they run that stop sign, and so that contributes to the problem. They come up and over the cut hill, the top of the grade, where the old railroad used to go through, and they are hauling, way too fast. With the added wine tasting in Los Olivos, and now with Maddie's Tavern, that, in my opinion, that low-income housing complex, they were able to shut off the road during the construction that went in front of Maddie's Tavern, Nahwig Avenue, I think it is, and it goes over to Caltrans. It's still shut off because my understanding is that Maddie's needs to put in the left turn lane, or pay for it, I guess. Could you clarify that maybe?
Sure, I'll give it my best. So yeah, Maddie's Tavern is, they're conditioned to build a left turn lane by the County of Santa Barbara based on our input.
Okay.
So yeah, I'm not familiar with the access openings that you were referring to as a part of that, but that it's all linked, I know.
Well, why they were allowed to open at Maddie's without that turn lane being put in, I'll have no idea. The county's at fault there, if you want to ask me. Because there's a lot of us on the northbound and Los Olivos residents that don't want to use that Grand Avenue, Figueroa Mountain, Highway 154 intersection on busy weekends, and it's getting worse and worse. Regardless of what you don't have any up-to-date data on traffic volume or speed, it didn't seem like. But a lot of people would use that road in front of Maddie's Tavern, go over to Caltrans, and either turn onto the highway there because you can see clearly in both directions. It's way better. And you don't have to deal with all of the traffic at Figueroa Mountain Road. You got on certain times, you got all the family school people coming down the road, and there's a lot of them. A lot of people coming out of Los Olivos. So that little road in front of Maddie's is way more important to the safety of that whole area than most people realize. It's great. You got a lot of ideas put forward. I'd like to see them, implemented. And I would also like to see you guys meet more often. You can't meet back in 21, September 29th of 21. In my understanding, this is the first meeting since then. That's not acceptable. This situation at 154, to us that live along the corridor and hear day in and day out the horn honking, the brake squealing, I mean, it's almost like hearing the birds chirping. It's always there. Anyhow, do what you can. We'll hold our breath. And I feel sorry for the next family that has to endure, horrible bodily injury or God-forsaken fatality. But, get moving on. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Appreciate that. So the next comments I have are on item 5, and I have some blank ones, but do you want to move on to item 5? Okay. Oh, I'm sorry. Okay, sure. You'll have to come up to the microphone if you could, and state your name so we can get it into the record.
Good evening. My name is Jennifer Beyer. I'm a longtime resident of Los Olivos, and I also want to thank you for being here. A couple things. I want you to think about sitting out here as part of the audience, and this is what I've heard this evening. I've heard that, or I haven't heard any definitive plans for any changes to Foxen, to Figueroa and Grand, or even to Roblar. But I did hear that there was a study done and published in 2020, which had those 3 to 4 specific intersections, roadways, brought about by the public. I want to say that I don't understand how a roundabout at Baseline and Edison can be ahead of these other 3 locations that we talked about. We have a stop sign. We have a 4-way stop sign. Why does that get priority over the 3 areas that we talked about back in 2020? And secondly, where does the funding come from and how does it get bumped up the process? I saw the process list. How does the roundabout get ahead of our concerns when there's already a stop sign, 4-way stop there? And finally, I would reiterate what Doug said and what some of the others said, is that we want to work with you. We want to be a part of the solution. We just don't want the solution to take 3 more years. And we want something or some pathway to address these specifically, tactically, and in a concise manner that when we come back here, let's say a year from now, we can have positive movement forward in these Los Olivos small areas. Thank you.
Thank you, Jennifer.
Margie.
Yes. I'm sorry.
No, there's a woman with her hand up.
Okay. Okay. I'll need your name and for the record. Sure.
Good evening. I'm Julia Tippold. I'm a local insurance agent, so I know quite well how insurance and accidents and all of this work. And I actually am also a wife of a retired law enforcement officer, so I'm familiar with the valley here. I've been a resident now for 20 years in Los Olivos, and I can hear every accident in my house, every single one of them. I live right by Fox and Canyon, and I've got a couple of quick questions because I think I'm getting some answers to my questions this evening. And one of them is, I appreciate the statistics that CHP gave, but I have a really big question for them. So Commander or Lieutenant, if you could answer this. Your statistics show 1 fatality, and we know as residents there's more. So is it only if they die on the highway or for your statistics, or is it even if they die at the hospital or days later from their injuries from the accident?
So the statistics that we have are if somebody crashes at the scene and then they pass away at the scene, obviously that's counted. But we also count fatalities up to 30 days afterwards as part of the crash if they pass away. Is that correct? Yeah. 30 days later on, we'll amend the report and add that as a fatality.
Okay, so I think part of the problem we're going to have in getting assistance to move forward on Fox and Canyon and Grand Avenue is that some fatalities are missing from your reports, and I don't know how or why. Like, we know the lady on the bicycle died. We know the gentleman died on the motorcycle. I hear the helicopters there 3 times a month. So I know there's been others, so I'm a little concerned as far as the committee is concerned that they're getting as much data as you really need to make these decisions, because early on in the presentation we talked about how our numbers are small in comparison to the rest of the county, in comparison to the rest of the state, and I'm concerned when I hear that if they're small we're not going to get action. And so I probably speak for a lot of Los Olivos residents when I say that. And then the other part of this is my husband and I were talking about this because he patrolled the area as well. Sergeant Alex Tippold, you may know him, and I know you, Eric. The 154 in Fox and Canyon. Because I agree with what I think her name was Beth, or what she just said about we need to not worry about the stop sign with the flashing lights right now, but work up to Los Olivos, is at Fox and Canyon and 154, what if we made it right turn only? Because when you, Sir Peter, or the other gentleman just mentioned that Maddie's has to put in a left turn lane to Maddie's, you have now killed my kid. Because I have teenage drivers that we will not let go out on Fox and Canyon. And we will not let go off of Grand Avenue. And my kids grew up in Los Olivos. So we specifically say you may not drive out there. They do not even go on 154 right there because we know they will die. So adding another left turn lane, which is part of the problem, because you just showed us that 60-some% are coming 154 southbound, left turn lanes onto Fox and Canyon, left turn onto Grand, are serious problems. Well, now you're going to add one more left turn lane into Maddie's. That's serious. That's got to be looked at before that happens. Okay? That was seriously concerning. So what if we made right turn only? My husband's been texting me. He's not here in town right now, otherwise he'd be here. But what if we made right turn only onto Fox and Canyon and got rid of the left turn onto Fox and Canyon? What about going from the dump across into Los Olivos? I'm on the south side of 154. You can't go across. You got to go right and then right again, or you go a different way. But I think the left turn is a big problem because, like Rocco just said, the 154 south is the speed trap. And I love law enforcement. I was married to one. We have a law enforcement shortage in Santa Barbara County, a significant one. You guys can't be everywhere. So you're not even getting citations like you used to because you don't have enough guys on the street. So our numbers are skewed again. So I'm not trying to pick on law enforcement by any means. It's not your fault at all. This is not on you. This is a bigger issue. But that does affect the statistics for us to get help for that area. Another part. I would rather, and it's completely inconvenient for me, but I'd rather shut down Fox and Canyon entirely if we're not going to do anything. I mean, raise your hand if you agree. It would stink. It wouldn't be convenient, but it probably would be better because I'd rather not see another death. I mean, I'm out there constantly with my neighbors, watching people, and my other neighbor, he watched the guy die over his car. Also, there's some differences in report studies here. One report study said 2.5% commercial vehicles on 154, and another one said 9 or 10%. And then some of these studies are included during COVID, which was at a stay-at-home order for 4 months. Guys, I was a stat major in college. I'm a business major. Garbage in, garbage out. So I'm not picking on anybody again, but I'm really concerned that if we don't have the right statistics, this safety committee is not going to be able to get us anything because we don't have the right data. So anyway, I had to give my piece just because I'm a local resident and I care. I'm an insurance agent. I care about my clients. I hate getting those phone calls that they died on the 154. I've had 3 death claims in the last week. I get it. So I appreciate what you're doing. Thank you especially to law enforcement for keeping us safe. If you catch my kid, let me know. I'll take care of it. And you guys take care. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Julia. I appreciate that. And I see what I have here. So it's Jim, are you Jim? Or Dave?
I'm Dave.
Okay,
I
Dave.
have a
And-
form there,
and-
so
yeah.
hopefully that's okay.
Yeah,
Thank you
Dave.
so much for being here. My name is Dave Elcon. I'm a Los Olivos resident. My daughter attends the elementary school. And I'm also the general manager of the Inn at Maddie's Tavern, obviously recently opened and developed over the last few years. And, you know, needless to say, all the people in the community, I live right around the corner and I use Foxen and all those intersections to get on the 154. We all know it's dangerous, the locals, the people that have lived here for some time, but if I can just share some of my stats with you, if I look at occupied rooms per year in social gatherings, weddings, parties, celebrations that we're gonna host on property, we're looking roughly between 75 to 100,000 transactions. I'm defining a transaction as a guest pulling in and out of the 154, right? And most of these people, they're not locals that are aware of the danger. These people are on vacation. They're tourists. They have no idea of the risks and the conditions that exist. And so the risks are gonna go up exponentially, right? And so although some of the statistics show, I was actually surprised to see the low number of fatalities and accidents. But as I look at our business, and we're already open, right? So we're already sort of, summer is upon us. These transactions are starting now. I'm so concerned about the safety. And it's not a matter of if, it's just when, right? So I just want to urge, express the urgency to address these specific areas in Los Olivos. Our business is based on creating experiences and memories, and but the second there's a fatality or something, it all comes crashing down. So I just appreciate everybody's focus and the urgency around finding a solution for those Los Olivos areas. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dave. And let me get the names that put out sheets, because you might already be on here and I just haven't gotten to you yet. So we have Jim Hone. Okay, and then Stan Roberts after Jim. So Jim, can you come up? And then Leslie Zuller will be after them.
Hi, Jim Home, Los Olivos resident. I live on Railway on the north side of the 154, so that's a good thing and a bad thing. The item that I wanted to speak on is Maddie's Tavern with regards to the entrance signage. I understand there's a left turn that's supposed to happen in sometime in the near future, but in the interim, historically, the entrance heading east on 154 was a right turn into the driveway, and then you arrived at Maddie's Tavern. That asphalt is still there. There's a white picket fence now blocking that entrance. But people don't seem to care about that. They are constantly turning stretch limousines, vans, sometimes 2 and 3 cars stacked on top of each other, trying to get in through the picket fence, realizing, oh, this isn't the entrance, and then having to get back on 154, which is a higher rate of speed and no run-up, and several times have almost caused an accident to me, my wife, and I'm sure others in the audience have seen that too. So is there any way that we can get a temporary signage that says Maddie's Tavern on the eastbound side, exit Grand, so that they quit turning into that picket fence and then trying to get back on the 154 when they realize they screwed up? It might prevent an accident, a death, or a fatality. It might be something that would benefit not having to respond and keep our police officers engaged in other activities. But it's something that I think is predictable, preventable, and also correctable with a little signage, at least on the eastbound side. I can't address the leftbound turn lane that's going to happen sometime down the road, but at least right now that seems to be an immediate problem that would be an easy fix in my ignorance. I would like to also just reiterate some of my fellow neighbors here and just say these meetings, the live ones and the ones we do virtually, are starting to get a little groundhoggy. We're saying the same things. You're giving us the same statistics, and we just seem to be saying, we'll see you next year, and we're going to do it again. We would really like to see, as some of my friends and neighbors have said, some actual action to try to address the issues we brought on. And I'll leave you with this. I'm retired 36 years in public safety. Got a little bit of experience in responding to all kinds of emergencies. I also got to attend several presentations by retired CHP captain, lawyer, and risk management expert Gordon Graham. Phenomenal person. And to paraphrase one of his many lectures, if an incident is repeatable, it is predictable. If an incident is predictable, it is preventable. If an incident is preventable when the root cause is determined and measurable corrective actions are put in place, then it is corrected. Potential risk and liability exists for the authority having jurisdiction, meaning a business owner or supervisor, regulatory agency, or government body, when repeatable, predictable, preventable incidents occur and measurable corrective actions are either ignored or experience delayed implementation. I think we're in that loop right now, and we need to do something different than what we've been doing. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Jim. Appreciate that. So Stan Roberts was next on my list, and then Leslie Zuller will be following Stan.
Good evening. My name is Stan Roberts. Los Olivos resident. I've been driving on that corridor of 154 over 40 years. And my wife also, some of you may see her ride her bicycle every day up Figueroa Mountain Road in Midland. So I would not want to be repetitive with all the things that have been said. I would not take any exception to those. And I would want you to consider as a committee how passionate we are about this. And I'm an engineer. I think that our law enforcement, they do the best they can, and I think that's honorable and do a good job for the resources that they have. The resources that are within the ability of Caltrans and the county planning. Engineering is the solution to this and has the greatest effect on people's behavior and protecting them. So you've noted some deficiencies in the current characteristics of the highway, blind curves, et cetera. You've done a lot of good improvements over the years that have changed it in a lot of the other areas. At 101, one end, we all used to cross that before we had an intersection there. And also on the other end towards the lake and up over the pass. So I'm pleased to see the focus being on not just 154, but Los Olivos. The roundabout plan for Edison is, to me, a bit of unnecessary energy and expense because the stop sign works great. Those of us who live on the other side of 154 and on the ocean side, if you will, the river side, we go to 150. We go down there to that four-way stop sign today to cross because it's the safest place to cross. And if you try crossing, I don't know how many of you walk or hike, but try to cross a roundabout as a pedestrian, and you'll get run over. For the bicycle, it's a little less go-y. But changing a four-way stop sign into a roundabout seems to not fit the statistics that were shown there. To me, the simplest, with the opportunity you have, which is the intersection at Calkins Road in front of Maddie's, that's also the straightest and safest next place to cross, maybe except for, say, at Roblar. But stop signs, with the finite funds that we have, stop signs don't cost a lot. So if you just took whatever you spent at Edison, multiplied it times 4, and put stop signs at Roblar, Figueroa, Calkins, or Fox, it might be a good start. Thank you.
Thank you, Stan. Leslie, are you? Yeah. Okay, thank you. Thank you for coming. Okay, Kim Schmitz. And then Sherry Noble will be after.
Hello, my name's Kim Schmitz. I'm a local resident in Los Olivos. I address you with a profound concern for the safety of our community, particularly at hazardous intersection of Fox and Canyon. It's a known fact that the intersection has been the site of numerous accidents resulting in injuries and even tragic loss of life. You must take swift action to mitigate the danger and prioritize the well-being of our residents. My family lives at 2975 Fox and Canyon Road. Our home is 2 doors in from the 154. We've lived there since 2016. Over the last 24 months, car accidents and fatalities have increased at an alarming rate. Due to our close proximity to the highway, we hear the collisions from inside our home and oftentimes are the first people on scene. My husband was first on scene to a couple in their mid-60s crossing the highway on their bikes. A car mistakenly stopped and waved them across. As the couple crossed Fox and Canyon at 154, an oncoming car traveling at 55 miles an hour tried to avoid crashing into the stopped car and swerved around and struck both cyclists. He held the woman's head in his hands while she was unconscious and dying. Her husband was critically injured nearby for 10 minutes until responders arrived. I was getting my children ready for camp last summer when I heard the blasting of a horn. Knowing the sound, I ran to the highway calling 911. I came upon an injured and dazed elderly couple in their truck in the middle of the highway. While getting their information and checking injuries to give to the 911 dispatcher, I saw a crushed car on the other side. I ran to check that driver who was unconscious in his vehicle. The car began to smoke and eventually catch fire. With the help of a local resident, we pulled the unconscious man from his vehicle and drug him to safety. It only took 6 minutes for the responders to arrive that day, but it felt like an eternity. The fear of the car on fire and people crying out in pain. Most recently, last month, we heard a loud collision and made our way to the highway to find a motorcyclist struck. He was wearing double leathers, a chest plate, and all the necessary safety precautions you take as a motorcyclist. The man was dead on impact. That day, it took 18 minutes for responders to arrive. In those 18 minutes, my husband and another gentleman performed CPR in hopes of saving his life. My neighbors were directing traffic and on the phone with 911, dealing with absolute chaos. Because it's a small community, we later found out this man's daughter's wedding was the day before. He went out on a weekend ride and never made it home. The families that live near the highway are not first responders, but because of the unsafe conditions, we are forced to witness these tragedies month after month. It's unfair to the innocent lives lost and our community. We need a roundabout. We cannot ignore the facts. These issues demand your attention now. The number of accidents and fatalities on this highway is simply too high to overlook. You have the responsibility to act swiftly, utilizing proven methods to protect our community. Thank you.
Thank you, Kim.
Madam Chair, can I ask Kim a question? Of course. That accident you just described, what caused the accident?
To Kim?
Yes,
Yeah.
correct.
The accident.
What caused the accident? The one you just described. Are they running the stop sign?
Could you come up so we can repeat?
Yeah.
This is very important.
So the stop sign on the far side, on the opposite side of town, you can't see. So tourists, people that aren't from there, they don't understand how fast and high speed people are coming. So these are weekends. These are our weekends. We hear these collisions. And they look, you can't see around that corner. They go across, and there's a collision. With the motorcyclists, there was no brakes. We knew it was bad because we just heard impact. There's a couple here.
So these people are coming off of Fox and Canyon onto
they're
the
trying to come
154.
across or to get on the 154. And they're not seeing the cars coming at high speeds, as people said, coming from the 101. They're continuing these between 55 and 70 mile an hour speeds. And they're colliding right there.
Okay, thank you.
It was the first presentation. It was CHP's presentation. Oh.
While we get that up.
Yeah. So while we get that up, we'll go to the next speaker, and that was Sherry Noble. Thank you for being patient. I appreciate
sure.
that.
Well, thank you for the opportunity. I'm Sherry Noble. I live in Solvang. I did work at Dunn School for 3 years and lived on that little corner across from the grocery store. And again, I'm a little surprised too with the statistics because I really felt that many times something would slam into my house. And it was surprising to me that in a school zone that this wasn't a 25 mile per hour speed limit was not enforced because we had many day students that had to cross that highway. They were young drivers, or their parents with, the high school students. And that was just kind of shocking to me. And then to see, in Los Olivos, the crosswalk that I don't think anyone would walk their children across safely. And as an educator myself, I, take great concern with that. The second thing I want to ask, and I don't expect an answer right now, but I have not heard this tonight, is are there any plans for DUI checkpoints? I have driven over from Solvang, the 154 and the 101 for 12 years to work and back, and I'm part of those little lines. And the things that I have seen, and I have called 911 quite a few times of impaired drivers that, so many close calls of just, head-on collisions, that if I was not defensive, I'd be one of those statistics, or my grandchildren or my daughter. It's so often that it's alarming. So there are some, excellent drivers on this road that are driving defensively. I know all the curves where someone has gone into my lane. But really the reason I wanted to speak tonight was, the article that I saw in Newshawk tonight, bridge work means long-term lane closure on Highway 101 near Buellton, from Alexa Bertola, who I spoke to earlier from Caltrans. And so we already have a road closure going south right now. And then now we're going to have till January 2024, 24/7 closures, another lane closures both ways. So you know what that's going to do with the traffic on 154. And it's something I check every morning before I go. Which way should I go? Where are the accidents? And if it rains, there's rains and floods and fires, and everything is, you have to take that into consideration when you're commuting. But, I'm already, we have summer, we have tourists, and now we're closing down to one lane both ways until January 2024. And it just makes absolutely no sense. I appreciate safe roads. But I am going, what is that going to do, to the 154 and the traffic? That's just a long period of time. Thank you.
Thank you, Sherry. So our next three speakers are Joy Chamberlain, Ray Vasquez, and Dennis Beebe, in that order. So Joy, if you can come up, thank you.
I'm Joy Chamberlain. I live on the north side of 154 on Fox and Canyon Road. I have to go across 154 just to get my mail. That's not to say groceries. Everything I do, I have to cross 154. Please expedite this as quickly as possible. I don't feel like it's right that going to get your mail should be a life-threatening experience. Thank you.
Ray, would you like to come up? Great, thank you.
Thank you. My name is Ray Vasquez, and I'm the superintendent principal at Los Olivos Elementary School. And on behalf of the children and families, I am here to speak. And just a couple thoughts I had is, it is a school area, and there aren't flashing lights. People aren't slowing down. There aren't speed limit signs that say 25 miles an hour. I don't know how that would be possible, but it certainly is necessary. The reason why I'm here is specifically is we have students or children that live on the north area, the north side of the 154. They cross the 154 every day in the morning to get to school and back home in the afternoon. They cross at Figueroa Mountain Road, at Calkins, and Fox and Canyon. My main concern is at the corner of Los Olivos at 154 at Alamo Pintado Avenue, where Los Olivos is located, there can be a car traveling at high rate of speed and a student is crossing, and that student starts crossing, and by the time they get through the lane, there could be a car hitting them. So my concern is, like everybody else here, is that hopefully we initiate change, if not for anything else, for the children of Los Olivos School. Thank you.
Thank you, Ray. Appreciate that. Dennis, you are up. Thank you.
Thank you, panel. I'm from Solvang. Oh, my name is Dennis Beebe, and I've lived in Solvang for 30 years. But I'd like to speak for the dangers that are currently present every day in Los Olivos. My credentials include a loss of my good friend before your time, 40 years ago. I lost my friend and 3 others in a single accident at that intersection. At that time, there was a blinking yellow light. Caution. It was removed and the speed limit increased. Ludicrous. I would like you to consider what previous speakers have said. When I first saw your plans included a roundabout at Edison, after you've installed an improvement, which I think works, and you're going to, I have an opinion that Caltrans has this need to put in roundabouts. I don't know why, when they're not necessary. As an engineer, I was going to stand here tonight and encourage the panel, the decision makers at SBCAG, to do a careful study of options for these dangerous intersections. And 3 options we heard earlier: traffic lights, 4-way stops, and roundabouts. I don't want you to consider options anymore. I endorse what Stan Roberts and others have said. I want you to cash in whatever you were planned for the roundabout at Edison and put in 4-way stops immediately. You could do it in about a month at all these dangerous intersections in the Los Olivos. Thank you.
Thank you. That completes our, yeah, go ahead. Okay, I'm sorry. Did I miss you? Oh, yeah. So come on up.
Again, sorry, Mark Herthel. Yeah, just again, thank you all. I think we heard a lot of very consistent feedback from people from Los Olivos and the Valley. One other thing that, just to point out that I saw in the SBCAG presentation was that there's a proposed trail from Los Olivos to Los Alamos along Highway 154. I actually recently purchased, I've been in town my whole life, but I recently purchased that property at the corner that was just up there where the railroad used to run through. And I'm in the horse business, so I'd love a trail that people could ride on horses, but I would say before anybody thinks of trails, this safety issue needs to be solved, because the last thing we need is more tourists wanting to go out in. The tourists are in La La Land. They think they're in Disneyland. They don't realize how dangerous the roads really are. And I would also encourage not putting a trail along 154, because when you have people riding horses and having fun, that distracts drivers who are going around corners, and they start looking at, we've arrived at La La Land, and we'll have more accidents. And also, when you put tourists with ag, you're going to have more incidents like Yellowstone, the park, not the TV show. All from Los Olivos all the way to Los Alamos is cattle ranches. And so I think maybe there's another idea to go up Fox and Canyon Road with trails. That may be a better route, but I would highly recommend scratching that idea until the public safety issue is solved. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Mark. So that concludes our public comment, as far as, unless somebody else would like to speak. Okay. Please, Charles, can you say your name for the audience, please?
I'm Charles Lancaster, resident of Solvang. To answer your question specifically, I was involved in an accident at Fox and Canyon in 154. I did not run the stop sign. If you look at the picture, if they can put it back up again.
Can we bring that back up, what we just had up? Oh, okay, we can see it. Thanks.
I'm sorry?
Yeah, we can see it right here, too.
Okay.
So, yeah.
It's a little misleading at that intersection because the slope on the south side, if you're the second car there, it's hard to see the angle. And when you get up to the stop sign, if you have a car coming, making a right-hand turn off of 154, it blocks the view. And you don't know that he's blocking the view because of the angle of the road there. So it's a little bit tricky. Yeah. So those two factors, the slope before you get to 154 adds to the problem, and then the angle of the highway before you get there. Yeah. You answered your own question earlier when you spoke about why are people on 154? To save time. That's the reason they're not taking 101. So they're speeding, and they're coming downhill southbound right there into that area. They're certainly not slowing down. I regularly drive to Santa Maria, to Tepesca Canyon, east to Santa Maria using Fox and Canyon Road. I'm very used to the area. If you drive 154 and you drive the speed limit, you will have a train of vehicles behind you. The only way to solve the problem is going to be to slow the traffic down. My recommendation is, being 76 years old, treat this area like Santa Barbara was years ago when they had all the stoplights, like Buellton was before 101 bypass went in. Treat this area as an urban zone and slow it down at a minimum from Fox and Canyon to Alamo Pintado, possibly to Edison, but certainly Fox and Canyon to Alamo Pintado. You need to slow everybody down to an area like near San Ynez High School or whatever it takes, and that'll increase the safety by getting people to slow down.
Thank you, Charles. We had one more person that...
My name is Eric Shepard. So it's very easy for us to tell you the problems because we live in the area. For you guys who don't necessarily live in the area, maybe it's easier to visualize what we're talking about. But that's that four-way intersection there. So this is just like what happened to me yesterday. I'm going up Fox and Canyon North because I live on Fox and Canyon. I'm going to take a left turn on San Marcos Pass. When I get there, there's cars going in very fast in both directions on 154. There's a car coming on the north part of Fox and Canyon trying to take a left. And then there's a big semi that came down right at the intersection. He's going to the dump. There's a big dump out there. So you got a lot of big trucks coming down the 154, and he's at the intersection trying to go left onto Fox and Canyon, and it's just a big cluster mess. Nobody can see anything. You've got people zipping down the 154 at 70, 80 miles an hour. You've got people on both sides of Fox and Canyon trying to make a left or right turn, and then you've got a big semi in the intersection full of waste trying to make a left, and he can't make a left because he's too big to turn there, right? Because he's a big semi. And this is what's happening on a daily basis every 10 minutes. So you can just kind of envision why there's so many accidents. I just kind of like close my eyes and hope for the best almost every time I take that during peak hours. So it is very, very dangerous, even if the statistics don't necessarily all show it, and I think that's what we're trying to impose you, and thanks for your time.
My name is Danae Weimer, and I'm a retired psychologist, and I don't understand a lot of the philosophical things about repairing roads and fixing roads and problems, but I do understand the impact on a community and individuals. Today is 1 month away from the year anniversary of my husband and I's accident at Fox and Canyon and 154. Now that means something to me, and it also means something to a myriad of people in this room who were witnesses that day, residents along the road that I now know and now know me by being in grocery stores, pushing carts as we walk along the aisles with tears in their eyes and saying, "I'm so glad you made it," and we have no idea who they are. But now we do, and you know who you are here. It's meaningful to have people in the San Ynez Valley recognize you from the news and from being unconscious. The first responders who came up to the car that lived in the houses along the road, and not only them, but the other motorists, the gardeners, the tourists, the many people that don't even speak English that wanted to help. And as I came to, and two men held me and leaned me forward and stood out of the way so I could throw up from the trauma, I will never forget them. And I will never forget the one woman here present tonight who came up and said, "What can I do? What do you need? How can I help you?" And she meant it. And I had no idea what happened. or the man who doesn't speak English, who I asked, "What happened to my husband?" And he said in Spanish, "No sé si él muerto." I'm not sure if he's dead. His head crushed against the window. One hour later, after our accident was cleaned up, and neither one of us were there, we were in the hospital, there was another accident at this exact location. And if you know about the statistics of these accidents, you may know that one if you've read about it. That is tragic, and it's unnecessary. And it's one that I didn't even see or know about, but I live with it, knowing that someone else suffered. And the very first time that I had to go to that location and approach it and know what happened, and without knowing what happened, imagine our truck hurling across 4 lanes, completely crushed. I was afraid. And I don't want that for anyone anymore, any longer. And I've heard about it way too many times. And I'm still honored the people that recognize me to this day on the news. Weren't you on the news at CVS? Wasn't that you? You look familiar. You know, how can that be? How can that happen? But these individuals that are here, that come out of their homes, they are the true first responders, and they're not being honored. This is something that affects the community. These people are here, and they're everywhere, everywhere where roads are threatening, but particularly this one that we're here meeting about tonight. These people are amazing that they can even survive what they've survived. And I don't see anything factored in that at all. You know, what do they get as honor? You know, I want to honor every one of them. Where's that in the community? Who's the person to instigate that? Me? I don't know. But I just wanted to bring that up. And, you know, they continue to witness these accidents. And, you know, I understand all the importance of everything related to your goals and statistics and strategies and data. I mean, that's really important. But there are other things that are also important that I don't know if it's talked about or considered. It's very meaningful, you know, towards all the individuals and their stories here. Everyone here and everyone that's not even here, and everyone that is no longer able to be here, like me. I can stand and I can talk after a cardiac aortic injury, a shoulder, a knee, a concussion, a neck. Look at me, I'm okay. But others aren't. And I don't want them forgotten in your plans. And I mean it. You know, we as people who have been in these accidents, you know, are not just a statistic or an injury report, a news story, a lawsuit, or a bodily injury claim. We're more than that. And we care. We don't just walk away, many of us, and say, oh, well. We don't do that. I live here, and I'm saddened. So please hold this as each one of you continue in this work, in your path, and your thoughts, your trajectory, your teamwork, and everything towards collusion reduction. Please stop it. Whoever's impacted, the real first responders in this room and all over the place, the ones that arrive via helicopter and ambulance and police cars and sheriffs, whoever they are, for the safety of all those that are impacted. And mine is a human plea for all. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And that concludes.
No, I'm sorry. My name is Alicia Gosarian, and I live on the corner of 154 and Fox and Canyon. Our house was the first one built in 1975. I am usually the first responder. I have PTSD. My daughter, who turned 18, has PTSD because of this reason. I held one of the police officers who was not dressed at the time. I held him with his last breath. We've had 2 cars go into our property, one caught on fire. How do you tell your daughter, who sees a police officer with a white sheet over him, about what happened to him? I remember the smells. I see the blood. I also held a woman who was a nurse, who went 75, who didn't have a seatbelt, who rolled into our property. Her car crushed her. I was with her. She died. If you would like to come to our house and stay at our house and listen every single night and hear the horns and the almosts, that's why I don't sleep at night, because I keep my shoes right next to my bed, because I know something's going to happen. I think, and the statistics, if I'm not right, but 2020, I think that was COVID, and I don't think we had that many accidents because we weren't supposed to drive. But if you go before COVID, I can name many, many, many accidents that happened prior to that. That's a very dangerous, dangerous place. And, I see some of you just kind of looking, well, blah, blah, blah. Well, you stay at a corner in your house, and you listen to it at night. I can't keep my window open at night, not even summer, even if I'm sweating, because I know something is going to happen. And then my next door neighbor runs all the time to give CPR. My husband and I were outside. We saw the 2 people who decided to walk across the highway in their bikes. We saw the lady get smashed. How many times do we have to say, don't take your bikes across the Highway 154? What happened? Did anything happen? We still allow bikes to go across Highway 154. Did anything happen with that? No. Somebody died. Did anybody decide to put a sign up saying no more cyclists are allowed to go across? We have done school kids go across. Are we waiting for all of them to get smashed? When the police officer passed away, we got the stop signs. That didn't stop anybody. If a police officer was there, he'd get tons of tickets out because everybody goes through those stop signs all the time. Now we have those little pylons. Who cares about the pylons? People drive through them all the time. We need something done. I can't sleep at night. My daughter is 18. She has PTSD. Because of this, we have kids on our block. And it's really awful because they can't even play outside because they're going to witness something that we have witnessed many, many times. Thank God I know CPR, first aid, but man, I am learning a lot. And this was not my calling, but I guess it is. And I've called 911, they know me now. Thank God I'm there, but man, I'm a nervous wreck. I don't know how you guys do it, because this is not what I wanted at all. But we've been there for over 30, 40 years. But please get something done, because those statistics, I'm sorry, are very wrong. And I don't know why you guys think that bikes can go across 154. That's a frickin' joke. I almost saw another older couple go across today, and they almost got hit. I just don't understand all this. And it could be easily rectified, especially with the cyclists. You know, you guys got to do something about that. I don't understand that. But when you see what my husband and I saw with the lady getting smashed with the car, you're never, ever going to forget it. Or if you see a car tumbling and catch on fire on your property and you see the lady get smashed with her head, you're never going to forget that. Or the smells, or the screams. I don't watch that crap on TV because I got it right there in front of my house. Thank you.
The first thing I want to do is thank everyone for coming. It's been very powerful, and I'm still assimilating all that I've heard. I know from personal experience that that is a treacherous intersection, and particularly between 4 and 6, where there's a lot of commuter traffic on 154 and a lot of people coming out Fox and Canyon. And as you mentioned, it's a dump and people are coming with trailers, and you can't make that left-hand turn. It's an impossible situation. I have heard people's concerns about the 154 and the 101, even the 246, and that's why we did our highway safety study of that triangle area. We have been out with Caltrans at every intersection looking there. And now we've brought everybody here to listen to you, and now our job is to think about how to better address the concerns that you've raised. So what I'd like to do first is, I can't square our numbers of accidents and fatalities with what we've got on paper. It doesn't square with what we know from community knowledge. And I would like to hear about that, as well as what are the options for this intersection? What more can we do?
So we have investigated this location, and when we look at crash statistics, as we looked at tonight, when we look at a crash, we're not necessarily painting a picture as to how many were injured necessarily. We were looking at the crash as a whole. And so with that said, it doesn't take away from the trauma that you experience. It doesn't take away from the reality. We understand that. We're humans too, right? We have family and friends. We're drivers ourselves and have seen pretty horrific things. For the most part. So with that said, what I'm hearing is a request to look at this intersection again. There's some information to hand, and we're happy to do so. In what? Sure.
Sorry, Rick Clifford, resident. I live on Grand Avenue, and most of the time I'm pulling a horse trailer around the valley. And what I'm not jiving with, and I think you said it, ma'am, is the numbers you come up with as far as the accidents and stuff don't jive with the reality of the boots on the ground. And what I'm afraid of is your statistics that go through the system and the government don't reflect what we're actually living with here in the valley. Example, on the weekend, if I had to pull my horse trailer out at 154, I go to the Edison stop sign because it's the only safe place to get across. And we pull our horses out on Roblar, and you've got pickup trucks coming this way, you've got left turn, bicycles coming across. It's too dangerous during the weekends. So you're down to Edison and Baseline. Now you're going to put that into a roundabout. You're not going to do anything about Fox and Canyon and Roblar and Grand. It doesn't make sense. It doesn't reflect the reality on the ground that we live with. And we do a lot of avoidance. We have tactics to get through the weekends. And that's maybe why things aren't as bad as it is, because we have tactics to avoid the conditions we have to live with around 154. I go to the dump, you know, it's scary coming out of there on the weekend. So just want to throw that out because you talked about your statistics and your specifications, and you gentlemen showed all this data up here that you've collected, but I don't think it reflects my life experience living here in Los Olivos in the Valley.
Thank you.
Lieutenant Civic.
Comment some of the data that we've collected, some of the discrepancies that may be showing. We go off of
Yeah, the mic isn't live.
Is that better? Okay, good. So commenting on the data that we put up on the screens for 21, 22, and 23, I base that off of the data that we collect based on documented traffic collisions that have associated collision reports. I would love, after this meeting, if anyone would like to talk to me about any data that we didn't encompass, I'd like to find out where that disconnect is happening so that we can better account for those accidents for statistical purposes, for Caltrans work, for ours, so we know where to direct resources. I apologize when we talk about statistics involving crashes. It's very easy to lose the humanistic factor of what is actually happening to you in your community. I absolutely 100% agree with what your comment was about the statistics don't reflect the real world experience, because if you have 10 near misses that could have been a fatal traffic collision, that's not reflected in our statistics, and that's huge. I live in the community, I run everywhere throughout this community. It's very important to me as well. I'm very passionate about it. I see it every day as well. I make that left turn pretty much every day to go to work. So I understand the realities of it, but I want you to know that if there's a disconnect as far as what our crash reporting statistics are and what you're seeing as a community, I want to know about it so we can fix it, so we can better account for this stuff. Thank you. And one thing that I was commenting on, and I wasn't trying to insinuate that we're to take away from that comment. What I was commenting on was there were a couple of actual statistics that I think you were referring to about a bicycle accident that wasn't accounted for and whatnot. So some of those actual like collision incidents that happened that we may not have accounted for, I want to find out where that gap is. I am also very concerned about the realities of the everyday commute that don't translate into an accident, but I was also talking about those as well. So thank you for letting us know about that.
Please come to the mic. This is very unusual, but that we allow the back and forth, but it's important, so we're going to allow it.
I think it would be, my name is Tony Nichols from Los Olivos. I live not too far from the intersection there. And I've been listening to all of this and everybody making their suggestions and everything, and I think probably one of the best solutions is for each one of you, maybe as a committee, maybe individually, to go and sit at that intersection for as long as it takes during a day to see exactly what happens, to see exactly what it is that they are talking about. To me, that would be proof to you. You would actually see it, see what goes on, see all the near misses, see the crazy things that do happen there. So just my suggestion to you. Thank you.
Thank you. So it is getting late, and we want to make everyone up here available to you to talk individually if you'd like to meet with us after. So, I did hear from Caltrans that we are going to look at this. I'm meeting tomorrow with Scott Eads, the director of this region, and we'll carry forward what I've heard here today as well. I'd like to ask my colleagues, and we also have our state representatives who can help us communicate this in Sacramento. So I'd like to ask if any of my colleagues up here have more that they'd like to add. And Mayor Perotti.
Thank you. I just want to thank everybody for sharing your stories, your concerns, your suggestions, your frustrations, and your pain. I've heard you, and I thank you. What will become of it, I don't know. I'm hoping that we can move forward and have more meetings. It's been a long time since the last one, the one we've had previously. So I guess I have a question. Is moving forward, and there was reference to the public wanting to help and get more involved. Is that an option? I mean, do we have a plan moving forward? Chair.
I think we have to assimilate a lot of what we've heard today, kind of huddle and see what the next steps might be, and we're open to suggestions. As I said, I'm going up the chain at Caltrans. It's you know, we have different agencies with different responsibilities, and somehow we've got to pull that together. And I think we can. I think we've had enough energy and pressure, and while we've heard a range of problems, we really are focused largely on one intersection. And there's a number of different things that could be done, and so we take one thing at a time, and that's going to be at least my focus. Supervisor Capps.
Thank you, and I'll be brief. I just wanted to thank everyone as well, and I'm a new supervisor, but not new to this area, born and raised, and serving with Supervisor Hartman, and I just want to commend you for taking the time and your emotion and your power. It will change things, and I can just add my personal experience. My parents almost died on 154 years ago, Walter and Lois Capps, by a drunk driver, and so the woman who spoke so passionately, who was a victim of accident herself, I just thank you for sharing. I will support and work with Supervisor Hartman. I see this disconnect of the data with this lived experience. That's where my mind goes of how do we bridge that. I don't know if there's some logistical takeaway that when you all can report in, I mean, with cell phones and data so that we can improve the data like now. That's where my mind goes, and my suggestion to this group of government officials here is to let's make sure that this data and what you're seeing gets captured immediately somehow logistically, that, you know, thanks to you at the far end of it here to offer that you're on these roads every day, but that's where, that's my takeaway from what we need to do immediately, is to make sure that this lived experience that you've so passionately conveyed to us is captured so that we can learn and changes can be made. Thank you.
So Director Kern just informed me that we do have a sign-up sheet up front, and if you would give your emails, then we can be in communication with you, you know, every few weeks about the progress that we're making, and you can get back in touch with us. So that would be enormously helpful, because you're the people who showed up today, you're the people with the knowledge, you're the people representing the broader community, so you're the opinion leaders, and we'd like to keep our communication with you open. Are there any other comments? Yes, please go ahead.
Hi, thank you, Chair Hartman. My name is Gunnar Langenhusen, and I work for Assemblymember Gregg Hart. I just want to echo what a lot of others on the panel have said, and thanking you for sharing your experience. It's necessary work to push, you know, us representatives and agencies alike to, you know, navigate the problem and figure out the best solution, especially for those who are experiencing it firsthand. So thank you for coming out, and thank you to all the other panelists who shared presentations and gave us a little background on this issue. Thank you.
All right, so I think we who are up here will come down there so that anybody who wants to talk to us further can. We'll get some draft meeting minutes out sooner rather than later, especially if you give us your email, and we will be following up. And again, thank you so much for attending.